All right, guys, so we got to talk about AOC, who last night went on MSNBC, Chris Haynes' show, to discuss domestic extremism in this country. Because, of course, this is the conversation that Democrats want to have in the wake of the alleged attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, right? They're trying to find a way to blame MAGA, right? They're trying to find a way to blame Republicans. They're trying to find a way to blame white supremacy. And during this interview, AOC made a couple of ridiculous claims that I want to talk about. The first of which doesn't have anything to do with domestic terrorism, okay? It has more to do with the economy, as it shows that AOC is completely out of touch. She's living in cuckoo for Cocoa Puff la la world. She is delusional when it comes to the state of the economy and inflation. Take a look.
And even when we talk about issues like inflation, a lot of this has to do with the massive consolidation of our markets and corporate greed. Our inflation is not going up due to government policies. Inflation is going up due to Wall Street decisions and the idea that they can just squeeze us for every penny that we're worth. And we can also say that and acknowledge the fact that that's impacting some communities more than others. And that, I think, is how we can really emphasize this message. But, you know, I think it's just really important to, again, center this fact that this idea that it's either or is very dangerous. And the idea that emphasizing social equity is somehow a detriment to our democracy is playing into the hands of the folks that don't want us to talk about either.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I don't know what's worse, okay? AOC making the ridiculous claim that inflation has nothing to do with government policies. Being a sitting politician and actually saying that out of your mouth, okay? Wow. I don't know if it's worse for her to say that, or is it worse for Chris Haynes, who's allegedly a journalist, to sit there and to nod his head in agreement and to not push back on that ridiculous claim. Because there are multiple reasons why we're having inflation, all of which basically have to do with government policy. Because again, if AOC's theory here was true, it's all corporate greed. Again, that's not to say that, you know, there aren't some corporations out there that may be price gouging or that may be trying to take advantage of the pandemic. That happens. But if that was the case, if corporations are so greedy, they can just arbitrarily raise prices on people, right? They control inflation. Okay, so why do we have this inflation under Trump? Why in the world did the inflation start to happen essentially as soon as Biden got in office, but more specifically, as soon as he passed his America Rescue Plan? Well, again, the reason why is because inflation is happening because of Biden's policies, okay? They're happening, one, because of all the spending that we've done. Essentially, we stimulated the economy with $1.9 trillion that we did not need, even though all the big banks, okay, all the financial institutions said, look, we're going to have a great year in 2020, okay? We don't need any more stimulus. The Biden administration decided, no, we got to have it anyways because we need to have our version of stimulus checks, right? It's our turn to try to buy some votes, okay? And that's what they did, even though we did not need it. Second of all, the lockdown policies that were pushed by the Democrats are the reason why we have supply chain issues, okay? So the core of the supply chain issue is that a lot of people just stopped working, right? So we did not have workers to help produce enough goods and services to match the demand that was being overly stimulated by the government, hence inflation. Also, money was cheap. Okay, the Federal Reserve, our interest rates were at an all-time low, damn near zero. So we were pouring money into an economy that did not have enough workers because of the lockdowns to meet the demand. That is why we have inflation, and we're still struggling to fix those supply chain issues that are a result of the lockdowns that were pushed and endorsed by the Democrat Party. Nobody wanted to go to work because they were receiving stimulus checks, expanded unemployment benefits. They were being paid not to work. So when it was time to go back to work, people were like, nah, I don't want to go back to work. I got all this money. And if I do got to go back to work, then they got to pay me at least $15 an hour. Okay, which again contributes to inflation because labor cost goes up. The cost of labor goes up. Now, businesses have to raise wages in order to hire people, which means they're going to have to raise prices in order to compensate for those wages. This is basic stuff. So all of that is the reason why we have inflation. All of that has to do with the government. I cannot believe that Chris Haynes really sit there and let AOC just spew that nonsense and then push back and say, you know, AOC, I'm not sure if that's correct, right? I'm not sure if that's right. Again, it just shows you how much of a hack these people are on MSNBC. They just let Democrats go up there and make whatever type of claims they want to make with no pushback, having to provide no facts or evidence, no receipts, no nothing. They just say whatever they want to say, okay? Again, absolutely amazing stuff. I can't believe that AOC actually has an economics degree. But again, the reasons why she's saying that is because she knows that progressive economic policies are not popular anymore, because we've seen the result of progressive economic policies, which is what Joe Biden embraced. And this is what we got, right? We got the economy we have right now that is currently in a recession. No matter how much the mainstream liberal media and the Democrats want to deny it, progressive economic policies put us in a recession. We're teetering between hyperinflation and going into a Great Depression. That's what's happening here, right? Seems likely that we're probably going to experience hyperinflation. Probably not a depression, but maybe hyperinflation, which in my opinion might be worse than a Great Depression. But anyways, we got to move on to another part of the interview in which AOC made a claim that I am so sick and tired of Democrats making with no facts and evidence to back it up whatsoever, which is that the greatest domestic terror threat that we're facing in this country comes from white supremacy. Take a look.
Also, really having to acknowledge a very central fact that reporting from the FBI and even in terms of Homeland Security, Jamie and I sit, and he is the chair and I'm the vice chair of the House Oversight Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, and we've held hearings on this, and there is absolutely no doubt that the data shows that the vast majority of incidents of domestic terror come from white nationalism, and that we are really truly facing an environment of fascism. And in the United States of America, this type of intimidation at the polls brings us to Jim Crow. It brings us back and harkens back to a very unique form of American apartheid that is not that long past ago. And we have never fully healed from it. And those wounds threaten to rip right back open if we do not strongly defend democracy in the United States of America.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that really kind of annoy me about that statement that these Democrats keep making, okay, when it comes to the biggest domestic terror threat to this country, okay? Allegedly, it is white supremacy, it is white nationalism, but they never provide any real facts, evidence, data, or statistics on all of these alleged white nationalist / white supremacist events that's supposed to be happening, going on in this country, right? It's such a big issue. Anytime an official gets pressed on this issue of where is all the so-called white supremacists, okay, and where the events happening, where are the facts, where are the data, where are the statistics, they have nothing. Like, for example, you guys remember when Greg Stube, who's an excellent Republican congressman, by the way, questioned Mariakis on this exact same issue after Mariakis made the claim that AOC made about white supremacy being such a big threat?
That we just flushed out here. How many cases involving white supremacists and domestic terrorists have you referred to DOJ for prosecution?
Congressman, let me
simple. Do you not have the number? It's a simple number.
You've made some profoundly inaccurate statements.
No.
That I would like the opportunity to correct.
I'm specifically asking you a question. You just clarified. Domestic terrorism is a threat to the homeland, #1 threat. And I'm asking you, how many referrals from Homeland Security have you made to DOJ for white supremacy or domestic terrorism?
Congressman, I will provide you with that information.
So you don't know?
Subsequent to this hearing. I do not have.
Can you name one case?
That statistic.
Can you name one case of a referral from DHS to DOJ for domestic terrorism?
Congressman, I will provide the data to you.
I'm asking you can't name one case.
And let me just say.
Okay, so you can't name one case yet. According to a new report from the U.S. Department of Justice, almost half of all the criminals prosecuted in federal courts in 2018 were aliens. charged with crimes ranging from drug trafficking to murder and to kidnapping, and the vast majority, 38,000, were illegal immigrants, illegal aliens. But it's still, domestic terrorism is the #1 cause of your concerns. Texas.
Yeah, so unlike the Democrats, I actually do have just a little bit of facts and statistics about the domestic terrorism that they kick and scream about so much that they say, hey, you know, this is something that everybody should be worried about, okay? Because it could happen to you, okay? It happens so much, so much. From the DHS, okay? This is the data that they have. Since 2000, between 2000 and August 2016, there have been 28 attacks in the United States committed by violent white supremacist extremists. 28. So over 16 years, guys, you've had about, what, 1.5, right? Somewhere that number. You've had about 1.5 attacks that have been committed by white supremacists per year. Per year. And 51 fatalities total over 16 years. Again, I'm not trying to downplay the deaths here. Obviously, 51 people that die, that's a bad thing, right? We should all agree that's bad. But 51 fatalities. 51 fatalities. That is a good month in Chicago, right? Just 1 month in Chicago, we're talking about 60-some people dying. So again, this is what really blows my mind. This is what I don't understand. We have a rampant crime problem going on across this country where you have people dying every single day, hundreds of people dying every single day in these inner cities that have nothing to do with white supremacy. And you don't want to talk about it. But you want us to talk about the threat of white supremacy, something that has taken 51 lives over 16 years. But we have a city in which 51 lives are lost in a month. And you can't say anything about it. If you say something about it, you're racist. But it's totally fine to talk about so-called white supremacy, right? And how much a threat that is. Again, it seems to me that our priorities are out of line, right? The priorities of the DOJ, the priorities of the FBI, the priorities of the Department of Homeland Security, they're all out of line. Because if this is what you're worried about, again, I'm not saying it's not something to be on the radar, but I don't think that this is what we should be talking about nearly as much as we're talking about crime. But Democrats don't want to have that conversation, right? They don't want to have that conversation because that is their fault, okay? What is going on in these inner liberal cities is their fault. Again, it blows my mind that AOC is more concerned about white supremacy and the domestic terror threat from that than she's concerned about the crime going on in her own district. When her constituents go to address her about the crime, about the crazy things that are happening in her district, in her city, she calls them homophobes, right? They're homophobes. They're not my real supporters. So again, AOC is more concerned about something that really is, you know, statistically speaking, you're extremely unlikely to be affected by this, right? She's more concerned about that than something that is actually really affecting the everyday citizens in her own district. Again, this is the problem with people like her. This is the problem with people like her. Priorities out of line. They're not in touch with reality on any issue whatsoever. They're more worried about racism, homophobia, so-called voting rights, the attack on democracy, women's rights that are not being taken away. They're worried about everything except the things that actually affects people's lives. And this is why these people are losing, right? This is why they're losing. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.